All right, West Virginia fans, it is here. Week 0. We finally will have games on our TV that will count, and we have a chance to watch some college football this weekend. I get it. West Virginia Mountaineers have another week to play, but there are still some West Virginia connections that you should pay attention to this weekend. In this video, I'm going to lay them out, and we're going to talk about a few other things surrounding these teams and how they kind of relate to West Virginia. If you're a West Virginia fan, please like and subscribe to the show if you haven't done so yet. We've been growing like crazy and want to keep this momentum going as football season goes. With that being said, let's get into a Week 0 preview and the West Virginia connections to these games. So let's start it off with the first one, probably the biggest game of the weekend, Kansas State versus Iowa State on noon at ESPN. This game is in Dublin, Ireland. So my first question to West Virginia fans is, how would you feel about playing in Week 0? Would you like playing before everyone else? I kind of would. I would love to have a Week 0 game, preferably against an FCS opponent, or maybe you get your Group of 5 opponent there. If you like to play Marshall, maybe you play Marshall on Week 0. That's an option. But how would you, first off, feel about playing on Week 0? And then my second question is, how would you feel about playing in another country? I think it would be pretty cool to go to a different country, to be honest with you. I'm not one to travel abroad. I like to stay in the U.S., but this might be a reason for me to go to another country for that reason. If they do take a game away from us in another country, I just hope it's not a home game, because I know how much the economy it matters in Morgantown for those home games. So I wouldn't want to see a home game get taken away out of Morgantown. But if it was an away game and it was on the road, I wouldn't mind seeing us play like a Week 0 game somewhere abroad. I think it would be kind of cool. Let's get into this game, though. And the West Virginia connections. Obviously, Rocco Becht, right? The son of Anthony Becht, West Virginia Hall of Famer, longtime NFL player. Rocco Becht's been a really fun guy to watch. It's almost a shame that we couldn't get him to Morgantown. Knowing what we know now, he would have been a great option as QB number 1. He continues to get better each and every year that he plays, and I think he's in for another big year. He lost a few of the receivers to the NFL, so it'll be interesting to see what he does with a new receiving corps. But like I said, this guy continues to get better, so I'm excited to watch Anthony Becht's son, Rocco, again play this season and on Saturday. The other West Virginia connection is 2 Big 12 schools. The thing is with this, though, is both these teams aren't on the schedule, which is a good thing for West Virginia. Kansas State and Iowa State are 2 schools that we played last year and did not compete well against. I think it was back-to-back weekends actually at home, and we did not look good against them. I think Kansas State and Iowa State are both going to be at the top of the league, so not having them on your schedule helps. But it's going to be fun to watch to see what they have this season, because they both have 2 really good quarterbacks with Avery Johnson and Rocco Becht, and they're 2 programs that have consistently won games over the last few years. So this one's going to be an awesome game to kick it off with. And then my last question with a West Virginia connection is, can West Virginia get to K-State and Iowa State's level? This is a good blueprint to have, right? I think resources-wise, Kansas State and Iowa State is in the same boat as West Virginia, right? You're a middle-tier Power 4 school, but with good coaching and consistent play, you can consistently win. So I think, can we get to this level, and how soon can we get to this level? If we can get to what Iowa State's been doing and Kansas State has been doing the last few years, I think it would change the perception of our program for the better, and teams would start talking about us. So that's my next question to you guys. How soon can we get to the Kansas State and Iowa State level? I think with this coaching staff, I think we're going to get there sooner than a lot of people think. But like I said, this game's going to be fun to watch on Saturday at noon. Let's talk about the next game at 4 o'clock, Idaho State at UNLV, 4 p.m. 2 former West Virginia Mountaineers are going to play this game. The first one's going to be Jaheim Joseph, who transferred to UNLV this past offseason. If you remember, Joseph came over from Northwestern last season, put up okay stats, 26 solo tackles, an interception, and 2 pass deflections. I was hoping to get more from him and Hollis coming from Northwestern, truthfully. The secondary was definitely a glaring issue last year, not putting it all on Joseph, but I was hoping to get a little bit more production out of him. But best of luck to him at UNLV with the change of scenery. And the other guy that's a former player is Mumu bin Wahad, who actually transferred to UConn after West Virginia and now is at his 3rd school, which is UNLV. So he played at West Virginia in 2022, played in like 4 games, had like 3 tackles, but he was a promising player that they talked a lot about in that camp. So it'll be cool to see him play for UNLV and see what his progression's looking like. And the other question I put in here is, would have Dan Mullen worked at West Virginia? So I'm happy with the Rich Rod hire, to be honest. I'm excited. I love the press conferences that he's been doing. I love the culture that he's putting into place. I think it's going to work. I think Dan Mullen, though, would have been a great hire. I'm actually surprised that his name didn't get brought up more. I'm not even sure if he had an interview or if Dan Mullen was interested in West Virginia. But if he was, and if West Virginia was interested, I think he would have been a perfect guy for the job. Look at the results here. He did it at a place at Mississippi State. In 2010, won 9 games. 2012, won 8 games. 2014, 10. 2015, won 9. And then in 2017, won 8 games. Mississippi State is not an easy place to win at. You are kind of a lower tier SEC school, and he won there, which then got him a job at Florida. And even at Florida, his tenure wasn't too bad, 34-15. That's pretty solid. Look at the times at Florida. 10 wins, 11 wins, 8 wins. He only finished below 500 once. So this guy has experience at a lower tier SEC school and did really well and turned things around there. And then he did well with really good resources at Florida. So I would have loved to see what he could have done at West Virginia. Again, I'm not sure how realistic it would have been for Mullen to come to West Virginia, but UNLV is going to be a team that I'm going to track this season. It seems like they've put a lot of transfers on their roster, a lot of guys that were promising at a high school that didn't pan out. So some people are calling it like the last chance U of Division I. So we'll see how that goes. But UNLV will be a fun team to watch this season, and Dan Mullen being back in coaching will be interesting. Again, I always would have liked to see what he would have done at West Virginia if he ever had the opportunity. Fresno State at Kansas. We're going to talk about this one. 6:30 p.m. on Fox. Former West Virginia linebacker Trey Lathan is playing for Kansas. We've mentioned that a few times this offseason. I really like Trey Lathan as a player, especially stopping the run. 79 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble last year. Definitely struggled a little bit in pass coverage. I'll never forget last year against Arizona. They had him against McMillan, and I don't know why he was up against him in pass coverage, but that's not really his fault. I would have liked to see him stay with the Mountaineers, him and Trotter, but ultimately they needed a change of scenery with the coaching change, so can't fault him there. Kansas is going to debut this new stadium that is beautiful, right? They've done a really good job with that. You can tell that Kansas is investing a lot in football. They got a big investment this past week, so that should be interesting to see what Kansas does. And that's my next question is, which Kansas team shows up in 2025? So let's take a look at what Kansas has done over the last few years. First off, let's talk about Lance Leipold, because I think this is one of the more frustrating things that I've wanted to discuss on the show. Look at his record the last few years. 2-10, 6-7, 9-4, and 5-7. There's this notion out there that Kansas is this rebuilt program and this guy's doing an amazing job. Listen, I get it. I know expectations are different at Kansas than they are at Alabama and Ohio State and even West Virginia, right? And I know it's been an afterthought for many years, but if you put Lance Leipold and you put his coaching resume against Neil Brown's and you didn't see who was there, they would be very similar, right? Neil Brown, the last 3 out of 4 seasons, I think finished with a losing record. So did Lance Leipold. So I really don't know why he gets such a pass, to be honest with you. The 9-4 season was great, but the year after Koldnicki leaves, they struggled, and their quarterback struggled mightily and did not look like the same player. The question is, though, what Kansas team shows up? Because they had a crazy season last year, right? They lost a lot of close ball games last season, a lot of one-score games late where they blew the leads. Illinois was a tough one. UNLV was a tough one. The West Virginia one, truthfully, they had a good chance at winning that game. We pulled it out at the end. They were in it with TCU. They were in it versus Arizona State. They could have easily went 4-2 in those games, but they just didn't finish the job. Then their season turned around in the second half of the year after the bye week, right? They beat Houston, really impressive win there by the score. They were neck and neck with Kansas State, a 2-point game. So it showed that this team was building. They go out and beat a good Iowa State team. They then beat number 6 BYU, and they followed that up with a Colorado win. And then they had a chance to make a bowl game at the end of the season, but they fell flat on their face and lost 45-17. So my question is, what Kansas team shows up this season? I think, Fresno State has always been a decent team, so they can't just sleepwalk into that game. I know the crowd's going to be juiced because it's the home opener in a new stadium, but Kansas is a team that I have my question marks for based on, again, what we just talked about here and their past record. So, again, I think for West Virginia this year, I think even though it's on the road, I think the Kansas game is a very winnable game, and we're going to see what the Jayhawks have this weekend coming up versus Fresno State. Up next, we're going to keep this one short. Sam Houston at Western Kentucky, 7 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Zyke Lawton, a Charleston, West Virginia guy, transferred to Sam Houston State over the offseason, started his career up in Cincinnati, came to West Virginia, didn't play much, so he moves on to Sam Houston State, drops down a level. Best of luck to him. We'll see how much playing time he gets and what stats he can do. It wouldn't surprise me, though, right? There's a lot of guys that in the past have not been able to see the field at West Virginia, but then they go on to a lower level and they do really well. So best of luck to Zyke Lawton in his game versus Western Kentucky this weekend. We'll see what type of season he has. And then the last game that we want to talk about is Stanford at Hawaii. And the West Virginia connection is Andrew Luck, right? Even though Andrew Luck didn't play at West Virginia, his dad played at West Virginia and was the athletic director, right? So you can see the picture there. I mean, it's too bad we couldn't get Andrew Luck to come to Morgantown. But then again, we also had Geno Smith. So anyway, Andrew Luck, let's talk about him, right? So first full season as general manager. Last November, he got hired as Stanford general manager. So it will be interesting to see this trend, right? Can former players become general managers at their universities and build a team? So he seems like a really smart guy. Stanford's not an easy place to win at. So that will be kind of fun to watch him this year. And he gets a good opportunity against a Hawaii team early. And then my next question is, which former West Virginia player would be a good GM for WV football? And it doesn't even have to be a player. It could be anybody. So let's talk about like a few fun options. Again, these are all very hypothetical, but I think the first obvious one is like Pat McAfee. It seems like he already has an influence there based on how well he's doing right in his life and how much money he's bringing in. And I'm sure he's donating money. So seeing Pat McAfee be a GM and a media personality would be pretty fun. I think it would be a good live look in to see there. I think even, Oliver Luck would be a really good GM, right? I think he has a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. He's a very smart guy, and having him be the general manager would be awesome to see. Even a guy like Nick Saban, right? We know Nick Saban has a West Virginia connection. Doesn't seem like he has any interest in coaching at West Virginia, but him being the GM and him working with like a Rich Rodriguez would be fun to see, because I think it would level up our brand. So that's another hypothetical. But again, that's kind of the West Virginia connection there. It's not really much of a connection at all, but it's something as we get ready for week 0. That's all I have. Week 0 is going to be fun to watch. I appreciate all you guys watching. I'm looking forward to watching the games this weekend and getting ready for West Virginia next week. Like I said, if you're a Mountaineer fan, please like and subscribe to the show. Let's go Mountaineers. Have a good night.